Welcome to the Valor Fire Training Podcast. We're glad you're here because this podcast is designed for you, the fire service community, to learn about tactics, training, and culture. In each episode, we'll sit down with influential firefighters to discuss hot topics and current events. Before we dive in, remember that you can find entertaining video versions of each episode along with more on our YouTube channel. Just search Valor Fire Training, subscribe, and hit the notification button to be alerted when new content is added. And now, here's your host, Dave Mellon. What is up, everybody? This is Dave Mellon with Valor Fire Training. We are joined by Herb Tyler. What is up, my man?
Not much, buddy. How are you?
I am good. I've been looking forward to this one for a while. We met down at the North Florida Fire Expo. It was the first time that we had met face to face and got to talk a little bit. And when I asked you if you wanted to be on the show, you were super excited. I was super excited to have you, so I'm glad you're here.
No, man. Thank you for having me, man. That was a great conference. I've been following you guys on social media for a while, and then I got to put a face to you, and it was kind of one of those things where two like-minded people just met at the same time, and it worked out, man. I was excited, and I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So you are with National Rescue Consultants, and kind of tell everybody about what you guys are all about, and kind of give an intro of where you're at. I know we usually use Vegadese, I guess, because some of us have places that we travel and go to, and other people don't. So tell everybody about yourself, kind of where you're at, what you're about.
All right. Name's Herb Tyler. I'm a lieutenant for a big city in South Florida. I've been in the fire service 19 years. I've been in the special ops for 17 years. Started National Rescue Consultants back in 2013. We were, myself and my partner, Greg Rogers, we were teaching for another company. We were doing a lot of military special ops training. And they decided that they were no longer going to do it. So myself and Greg sat down, and we started talking, and we were like, well, we want to get back into the fire service, and we wanted to be taught the way we wanted to be taught, not the old school way of, well, this is what the PowerPoint says. And just reading off the PowerPoint slides and not explaining the why. So many places that you go and you train, they'll tell you, okay, do this. And then when the student asks a question, well, why? Well, that's because the PowerPoint says so. Or
Right.
That's the way we've always done it. So our thing was, you got to be able to explain the why. You got to have street vetted personnel. And the biggest thing is no egos. None of us are better than each other in the fire service whatsoever. It doesn't matter if you work at a big department, a small department. The reality is, whatever logo is on your chest for your fire department, well, damn it, that's the best fire department around. And that's the reality of it. And so now we're coming up on our 10 years. We teach engine, truck, RIT. We do leadership classes. We do everything USAR. We have 10 trailers with every discipline in there. We've been all over the United States. We're going to Canada actually on Sunday. So it's one of those things where we've been very blessed. I've got to meet a ton of great brothers and sisters throughout my travels. I've learned a lot, and I'm just blessed to be here, man.
Dude, that's awesome. And it's funny because there's a lot of people that I have followed my entire career. And now obviously with the social media aspect and the podcasts and some of the other media outlets, it's cool because I follow you guys follow us, and we're always learning nuggets. And it's so cool to see the collaboration that's been going on. Justin McWilliams, yesterday, he posted a picture. It was super funny. I was in the fire truck. We were on the way back from the store. I was riding backwards. And he posted a video of his gloves, and he has a Kevlar loop that he uses to pull his gloves on. And I'm like, dude, that's ingenious. So I hopped on Amazon. I typed in Kevlar cord, and I ended up ordering. It'll be here at like 2 o'clock today, and I'm going to go put it on my gloves. I mean, it's just little things like that that I've picked up so much nuggets from you guys and a plethora of other training groups. But the one thing that you said that really kind of struck a chord with me in a good way is, when we talk about street vetted people, and I've gotten into this discussion a lot with different instructors, what do people consider street vetted? Right? I've heard instructors in the past say to a group of firefighters, maybe 50 or 100 firefighters in a room, if you're not getting taught by a firefighter in a major metropolitan fire department, you shouldn't be in the class. And I'm like, bro, come on, man. Like, there's people that I've seen in some very small agencies that are really, really good at what they do because they have to be. Because
Correct.
they don't, they're fighting a fire with 6 people, so they have to be really good at command. They have to be really good at fire attack. They have to be really good at pumping trucks. And so, one of the discussions that you and I had, I don't know if you remember, down in the North Florida Fire Expo, I will never teach something that I have not done until I'm proficient. I
Correct.
won't do it. If it's a tactic, if it's a skill, if it's a topic, I'm not going to teach it or touch it until I am proficient. And I have other instructors in my cadre who maybe have more experience on a platform aerial. I've been on a quint. I've spent 7 years as a lieutenant on a quint. I'm good with the quint, but you start getting into buckets, man, that's a whole nother story. So how do you guys address that? I mean, I know you guys have a lot of different cadre members. Do you have a vast level of experiences?
Yeah, so we have 25 plus in our cadre, and everybody has their specialties. Um, and that's the thing. We When we sign up for a class and the department reaches out to us, it's not a, hey, can you go do this class? I will cancel the class before or move it back to get the correct personnel there. The old saying, you can't be the best at everything, is very true. And the reality is now, just because you put that shirt on that says you're an instructor does not mean that you are the best. Because I can assure you that if you start trying to bullshit people in the class, there's someone in there that knows a little bit more than you do. And they're going to call you out. And the moment that you get called out on your bullshit, you lose all credibility. And once you lose all credibility, you might as well just wrap up your stuff and go home because the class is done. No one's going to take you serious after that.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And I have seen, I guess, less of that here lately. I mean, I would say probably within the last 5 to 10 years, I've seen a lot less of that, and I attribute that to social media.
Yes.
I attribute that to people that would get on social media in the very beginning, when Facebook and all the Facebook groups and all that started becoming a thing. You'd have instructors who were like, oh, well, I want to do this and I want to teach this, and here's my way of doing it. And they would get absolutely shredded apart by one question: why? And they
Yep.
couldn't answer it. And so, yeah, you're right. I mean, there have been multiple instructors over the years who have grown and become better, and I've watched them as they started out just teaching engine company, but then they got assigned to a truck, and now 5 years later they're starting to go out and teach truck stuff because now they're comfortable with it. And so it's cool. It's neat to see it grow.
Well, and that's the other thing. Like you and I have both been in the fire service for quite some time. When you and I first started in the fire service, if you wanted training, it was at the local fire academy. That was it. So you were only learning whatever was being taught within your region.
Yeah.
You weren't learning from David from Kansas. You weren't learning from Herb from South Florida. Like, you were learning regional tactics, and that was it. And it was passed on and passed on and passed on. There wasn't all these conferences. I mean, 5 years ago, there wasn't all these conferences that there is now. And is every conference great? No. And do some people do it for a quick cash grab? Yeah. But if you look at the lineup and you do your research, no different than FDIC. Not everyone that lectures at FDIC is the best lecturer. You have to vet your instructors and see where they came from, what it is that they stand for, and then decide from there. But social media has been phenomenal because now the younger generation that's coming in the fire service, they have so much knowledge and so much means to gain knowledge if they're willing to take it. You can go on YouTube and type in whatever, anything firefighter related, and you're going to find shit, probably 100,000 different videos from all over the country. So it's a great thing. Um, and I really love to see all these different companies that are popping up, and a lot of them are 99.9% are all doing it for the right reasons. Just like what you guys are doing. You and I had a great conversation about not trying to sell something just to sell it. Like, you can't be the best at everything. So put the right people in the right spot.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So we were talking a little bit off camera about traditions in training and how, a lot of the stuff that we grew up with and we were trained when we were coming up in the fire service, uh, it was glamorous and it was kind of the cool thing to do and it was a rite of passage. But as we've come into the fire service more and more, we've realized that maybe it was just kind of showboating, I guess. And so the example that I gave you was the church raise, where you take the 50-foot ladder with the bangers and you put it straight up vertical with 4 ropes, and then you have to climb up, go over the top, come back down. We had to do it.
Yeah, we
Uh,
had to do it as well in Fire
yeah,
Academy.
yeah, and it was like, holy shit! You want me to climb up there and go over the top, and where's the where's the rope? Where's the harness? And they're like, yeah, you don't need a rope, you don't need a harness, just don't fall. And it was kind of one of those things where I'm like, man, I can't believe I did that. But there was absolutely zero value to it other than just to say that you did it,
And
right?
and that was it. It was literally, and I'll never forget when we had to do it at the Fire Academy 20 years ago. It was literally, you climbed up there, and I'll still remember it to this day. One of the guys goes, "Well, what happens if we fall?" And the instructor, sitting in his car, goes, "Don't fall. If you fall, it's not for you." And that was it. So, being a young, impressionable young man, I was like, "Oh shit, I better not fall. Like, this is huge." Well, did it really serve a purpose? Absolutely not. I mean, there's fire academies still to this day that are teaching search with everybody on the wall doing the choo choo train method.
Right.
And it's in fire standard books that's how you search. And the training is not, the standards training is not progressing. It's still the same from 20 years ago. So there's an issue with that, because now when these young guys are getting out of fire academy and they're coming to the departments, they're just coming with a certificate. That's it. Now they're going through 14-week recruit schools to actually learn how to be a valuable fireman. So it's there's a lot of stuff that we do for tradition. Like, we used to have to carry the 35 over our heads for PT and run while the instructor was, I'll never forget, in his white Crown Victoria, driving on the road while we're running. And he says, when I get tired, that's when we stop. Did it serve a purpose? No. I've never ran with a 35 over my head in 20 years.
Yeah.
So it there's a lot of things that we do that probably serve zero purpose in the fire service, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah. And I, from a psychological standpoint, and it's interesting because I was having this conversation with a friend of mine that's a psychologist. And I asked him, we went to school together and he moved to California and I live here in Kansas. So we were talking and I said, I got a question for you from a psychological standpoint. When we're doing these things, I understand motivation and building up confidence. And those are all acceptable things. Carrying a 35-foot ladder and running with it, that is more for team building
Hmm.
and building confidence to know that you can reach your limit and continue. Um, but what I found is, things like when we do live fire, Valor fire training, and whenever I'm teaching at the regional level, when we do live fire, I try to keep my temperatures anywhere between 450 and 500 at the ceiling. I don't see the benefit in putting it to 1250 degrees and melting shields and effing up equipment because it's a rite of passage. That does nothing for me,
Correct.
right? And so, for us, the closest that I will get to that is I will take a swath of, and this is probably going to piss off the NFPA 1403 wizards, but I'll take a swath of carpet and I'll put it in the burn container closer to the fire, and we'll let it get hot enough where it starts off gassing. And I'll show them that that carpet starts to melt, it starts getting sticky, and then you'll see it pop off. And I go, that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yes.
That's as hot as I get it, you know?
Well, and we've you and I both have went to different conferences. We went to different trainings throughout our career where it's live fire training, and the guys that are instructing, their only goal is to get it as hot as possible, to see who can stand in there the longest, melt their shields. Well, listen, everyone knows that that's hay and pallet. They know you're not in there fighting a big 3 alarm fire. You're fighting in a Connex box. Let's be honest here. Um, just to just to burn up your gear, you're getting absolutely nothing from that. All you're doing is just burning up gear for no reason. And on top of that, look at a lot of these instructors that are there that are doing this form of training, trying to get as high as possible. They have their job coats underneath. They have the big burn hoods on. They're they're fully encapsulated. They're good.
Right.
They're not getting blistered up. If you're injuring the students and blistering their ears and stuff like that, burning up their shields, they got nothing out of that. Zero out of that training. All they learned was, hey, you know what? Fire gets really hot.
Yeah.
So that's my take on that. I agree with you 100%. When you're doing live fire, you don't need to sit there and destroy their gear. There's no reason for that
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Now, I will say, and there was one interesting thing that I heard not too long ago. I was talking to one of the guys that went through the Georgia smoke diver program. And they said, and it's very similar to like Jim McCormick out at FDTN. They do a very similar thing where it's a confidence building exercise, but they get it up to the point where they get the students to their breaking point. They get them to the point where, like, I want to crawl inside my helmet because it's so hot, and then they release the heat and they let them continue functioning. And so it really is just kind of getting you to that point of knowing where your gear will protect you. And I think that that's important because my Nomex gear versus your PBI gear protects us differently. The thermal liners protect us differently. So I do agree with some sort of, hey, this is what will protect you. And listen, I don't want to compare it to like law enforcement. Cops aren't going around being like, hey, this thing will protect you from a 5.56 round. Let me shoot you in the
Exactly.
chest plate. But they do shoot each other with sim rounds, and there is a level
Yes.
of protection that they know it will provide. And so I think that's important. So, what kind of traditions do you feel like are good for us in the fire service, and what traditions do you like teaching others?
So tradition for myself is huge because it's been passed down from guys and girls who came before us. Um, Prime example for us at my department, still to this day, when you get hired, you go through a year of probationary, just like everyone else. You have a module book, but we still do a map test of the whole city. And I remember when I got hired, it was back when TomTom just came out, the GPS system. I was like, well, why do I need to know all these maps? Well, now later on in my career, I'm hearing these younger guys say the same thing that I said. Well, our computer in the rig tells us where to go. Well, guess what? That doesn't always work, and it's also a rite of passage. And there's something to be said when that engineer gets out on the apron. He doesn't have to say, "Hey, Lou, where do I go?" He's turning. Why? Because he had to go through that rite of passage, and that's one of those traditions that I do truly like. I think it's a great thing. Um, but I also feel like a lot of tradition has kind of went by the wayside in the fire service lately. Um, I don't know if it's because of just the culture that we live in right now. I mean, the climate, excuse me. I don't know if it's maybe we're transitioning from a blue collar job and they're trying to make it into a white collar job. I can't tell you, but I can tell you that a lot of traditions are kind of falling by the wayside because the younger generation that's coming in does not look at it as how you and I have looked at it as this is a rite of passage. Like I got to do this. Like when we did map test, there was no you better get 100. There is no getting an
Right?
80.
You can't make a wrong
Yeah,
turn 1% of the
like
time.
there that's not acceptable. Um, but there's stuff like that that I still feel is very good. And if some of the listeners out there are working for a department that some of that tradition is went by the wayside, it's okay to bring that tradition back into your own house and do it there. I get it. Your department might not let you do it, but you can do it within your house and keep that tradition going and make that house be the best house that there is. Um, so that's my 2 cents on that. I mean, I wish I had more to elaborate on it. It's just it's one of those things. It's very regional for everybody. I mean, for us, you got to be firefighter one or two. You got to be either EMT or paramedic. Uh, Pretty much in the state of Florida to get hired. So they're coming in with very minimal knowledge because they're getting it from the academies, and the academies have to teach to the test.
Sure.
So they go through, depending on what department you're at, anywhere between a 6 to a 14 week probationary school. They're learning the way that the department does it, and they're actually teaching them how to be a functional firefighter. So it's that's a tradition that we still do to this day. We do a 14 week probationary school. That's after they went through fire academy, EMT, and paramedic, and then we teach them everything from vehicle extrication to high rise to garden apartments. So they're going through everything so that when they get on the rig on that first day, they understand how my department operates. So that's a really good tradition that I like to see.
Yeah. Well, and it's so a little known, and I don't really, I guess I haven't ever talked about it a whole lot, but when I went through my Fire One program in Nebraska, the community college that I went to had their own fire training center. And so there was the building, there was the school building, then we had the garage, which was the station, and then you had the burn tower, and it was like a 6-story burn tower, had all sorts of stuff. And then we had Connex boxes and some other props outside. But my class was the first one where they started doing an academy where you had to buy a uniform shirt, you were issued a badge, you were issued a name tag, you had to wear black pants with black shoes and black socks. And when we showed up in the morning, and this is just for Fire One class, this isn't for the degree program, right? This is just Fire One. And they did the same thing for the degree program students. When you showed up in the morning, you had to sweep the floors, you had to mop, you had to clean the bathrooms, you had to go make sure that the coffee was made. There were explicit instructions on how to make proper coffee. And I used to laugh at that. And I'm like, who doesn't know how to make fucking coffee? And then, obviously, yeah, you get on the fire service and you're like, bro, you've never made coffee before?
Yeah.
So it really was all the way down to, and kind of along the same lines as you. I don't have a ton of the traditional stuff that we teach, but it was a weekly chore, and it always happened to fall on our night. But we had to take every wooden tool, so wooden axes, wooden pike poles, whatever was wood, we had to give it a light sanding and put boiled linseed oil on it. And there was another day that was assigned for completely tearing down every chainsaw and every K12 and, making sure that it was properly oiled and all the stuff. And so again, it was just one of those things where I'm like, man, this really honestly makes sense, because now when I get out of the fire server or get out of the program, I knew how to clean a chainsaw. I knew how to mop floors. I knew how to make coffee. And so you're right. I mean, there are a lot of academies that they're focusing on the Fire One book. They're
That's it.
focusing on what's in the book, but they're not focusing on how to be a firefighter.
Well, and that's the thing. Uh, Something as simple as if you're the new guy, you should be the first one up and the last one to sit down. And they need a volunteer. Well, guess what? You're the volunteer. Um, that's not being taught anymore in the fire academy. Um, Simple hand tools aren't being taught in the fire academy. I'm sure you've ran into it. I've ran into it. Um, you ask a guy for a Phillips, and he says, "Is that the plus or the minus sign?"
Yeah.
Uh, it's we laugh about it because before the fire service was guys were working, they would come do their tour, and then they would get off, and they were either contractors, they were owned a landscaping business, mechanics, whatever the case may be. Now these guys are they come to work, then they're going surfing, they're going riding on the side by sides, doing whatever, and they come back in 2 days and they go back on tour, and that's it. They don't work a second job. So I understand, and it's up to the older generation, myself, you, to teach these guys. It's not their fault. And I've heard so many people throughout my travels say, "Well, these guys are unteachable." No, they're not unteachable.
No, they're definitely teachable.
They're they want to learn, but they don't know what they need to learn, and that's where the senior guys need to come into play and say, "Okay, look, come here. Let's sit down. Let's just go through some basic hand tools. Every day training does not need to be throwing a 24 and pulling lines. Guess what? It's raining outside, it's snowing, whatever. Hey, go in the bay, grab the toolbox. Hey, go through, show them how to change a blade on the saw. Explain to them what the mixture is, what 50 to 1 means, what 40 to 1 means. Explain all that to them. That's up to the older guys. We need to be teaching them that. You can't get mad at the younger generation that's coming up and saying, "Well, what the hell? You don't know what you're doing?" No, maybe they were never taught, and maybe you didn't take time to actually get to know the guy. Was he ever exposed to it? And then guys get mad because they don't know how to drive good. Like in Florida, the new guys normally drive the ambulance.
Does anybody know how to drive good in Florida?
No, no, no. Especially if south of Orlando, no, not at all. So that's the other thing. They're putting these guys to drive the ambulance, and then you go out in the parking lot and they drive a Toyota Corolla. Well, you can't
Right.
get mad when they've never drove anything this big. So, did you teach them how to drive? Did you go out there and spend time with them? Did you teach them how to the turning radius and everything, or did you just yell at them because they're driving like shit? So there's a lot of stuff that when I hear throughout the travels of the older guys complaining about the younger generation, no, it's you. It's not them. They're moldable the same way we were. So you need to do your senior man duties and teach these guys. Because on top of that, leave your legacy so that God forbid when that day comes and you pass away, all these young guys are going to be there like, man, you know what? David was awesome. He taught me so much shit. And for me, that's how I go to work every day. That's my goal. My goal is to teach. Like I want to leave it as cliche as it sounds. I want to leave it better than I found it.
That's not cliche at all, man. I mean, that's I think that's what we want. You know, guys like you, guys like me, guys like the people that we hang out with. That's the common denominator is that we want to
Yep.
leave this fire service better than we left it. I don't think that sounds cliche at all. And it's funny. God, I was trying not to laugh out loud when you said it, but I just went through this with a dude on my shift. He's a really good kid. He's like 20 years old. The dude didn't know why there was an open end on the wrench. Like he had no. I mean, he knew how to use a wrench. He's not an
Yeah.
idiot, but he's sitting there and he's pulling it down, and then he'd pull it off and go back up and pull it down and take it off and put it. And I said, "Hey, bro, turn it upside down." And he goes, "What?" I said, "Yeah, come this way and then flip the wrench upside down, and then you only have to go up a little bit to the next notch, and you can, tighten it faster." He goes, "Dude, is that why it's like that?" I'm like,
Boom.
"Boo. Like, how did you not know this, man? Like, how did you get this far in life? Like, that's something my dad taught me when I was like 5, right? Like, I used to help my dad out in the garage, and we'd do stuff. And but again, he might have not had those experiences, and so um, we
And
laugh, but it's something that simple.
yeah, and it's everybody's so quick to jump at the fire station. Okay, we got to throw ladders. We got to pull lines. All that is 100% important. Absolutely. But also remember that these people are our family. We're going to be with them 20 plus years. So there's 24 hours in the tour. We can pull lines. We can do all that. But if you see the younger guy struggling or maybe not comprehending something, pull him aside, help him out a little bit. It's that right there. Not only are you teaching him valuable lessons for his job in the fire service, you're teaching him life lessons. That's going to make an impact. And all we have when our time is called is our legacy here. And I can tell you right now that I want my legacy to be good. I want my kids to be at my funeral, and I want people to come up and be like, "Hey, you know what? Your dad was a great guy. He taught me a lot of stuff." And that's what I strive for every day.
I love it, man. I love it. So let's kind of segue into leadership, and I think you touched on it's our responsibility to teach the younger generations, and I find as a senior firefighter, as a company officer, as an administrator, I spent a little bout in administration, and I couldn't be happier to be back on a rig. But when we talk about the responsibility of leadership to make sure that those things are happening, where do you see us failing right now? There's recruitment and retention issues. We're dealing with pension stuff. If you're a union, I mean, I'm a card holding IFF member. We're having pension issues in certain places. I mean, there's a lot of different stuff that it really comes back to us and leadership and how we're using our leadership either to our advantage or the leadership is against what we're trying to do. So, what are some things that you're noticing kind of culturally in the fire service right now that you think we need to be watching?
Well, so for one, it's throughout all my travels, it's always been the same ongoing issue. I hear the same thing every time. When guys and girls travel up the ranks, they forget where they came from. So they forget that what it was like to be on the line, and they forget how you need to take care of your guys. Because if you don't take care of your guys, it's a two-way street. It travels up and down. I promise you. The guys can make you look really bad, or the guys can make you look really really good. So with that being said, I feel that leadership, especially at the top level, they forget where they come from a lot of times. And I'm not putting the blame 100% on them, because I also understand that when you go and you take that position, no longer are you a protected employee in a lot of departments. Now you're an at will employee. So they might still have 10 years before they retire. And everyone's goal is they're trying to get the pension and they want to retire and live a happy, healthy life and hopefully be cancer free and all that good stuff. I get it. But they seem to forget really quick that your job is the guys. Your job is to take care of your guys and give them every opportunity to succeed. There shouldn't be door closers. There shouldn't be any of this. Well, when I was here and when I did it, just suck it up. Well, that doesn't work. And leadership by fear has been proven not to work. So guys shouldn't be scared to voice their opinion for fear of retaliation. And that's been an ongoing thing throughout the fire service is when guys get promoted and they start advancing in their career, it's almost like it's a light switch where it's like, now you're going to do what I say, and that's it, without hearing, almost in the form of a dictatorship, to be quite honest with you. um, and then you'll see some departments that they'll make committees, and the committees will dump their heart and soul into it for free. They don't get paid extra for it. They do all the research on their own to just be shot down. So why are they even doing it if you're just going to go against what they said? Excuse me. So it gets to one of those things where I wish I had the answer to why they change like that, but that has been the ongoing complaint that I've heard throughout my travels and at conferences that we all go to. It's always the same. It's always the same thing. Well, why don't they listen? So I get it. And I wish I had the answer for it, but leadership is a two-way street. And that's what people don't realize is that leadership, as much as people want to say it starts at the top, it also starts at the bottom.
Yeah.
Um, and it flows both ways.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think it's so. I got my 100-pound golden doodle upstairs going nuts. I'm sure there's probably somebody delivering a package,
Yeah, it's
but
my camera on there.
but no, I think it's so funny that no matter where you go, right? Like I've traveled all around the country just like you have, and it doesn't matter where we go, big or small, near or far, they are all talking about the same issue. My chief doesn't understand what we do. My battalion chief doesn't understand how our shift works. My captain doesn't understand the struggle that I'm going through as a backup relief driver. How do they not understand that? Because they were there at one point or another, you know? And so again, it's easier for me to sit there in this seat and say, "Oh, well, as a chief, I don't understand this or I don't understand that." But at the same time, I kind of lived it, right? Like I became, and a lot of people have heard this before, but I became the interim EMS director, whatever you want to call it. It was basically EMS division chief of, division chief of EMS for like 6 months. And I was asked to do it by my chief. I agreed to do it. I walked in there. I didn't change a ton of stuff, but I was going in 3 or 4 days a week, 8 to 5, and running on a 24-hour shift and picking up extra callback if I needed to. And it didn't bother me. It was, I wanted to keep my finger on the pulse of what was going on. And so then I go to another neighboring department and I'm talking to some friends and they're like, "Yeah, man, we haven't had a chief officer jump on a rig in like ever. Like I've never seen that happen." And I'm like, "How do you not have battalion chiefs that are still jumping on a rig? How do you not have a chief that says, you know what, every once in a while, I'm going to go jump on a rig and run a shift, right? Even if it's just for show. They come out and they run a shift and they ride backwards for 24 hours."
Well, and to elaborate on that, that's a great point. And if you sit here and listen to a lot of the guys' complaints, it's we feel our chiefs are disengaged. We don't see our chiefs. I can remember when I first got hired in my department, that chief knew every single person's name, their kids' names. And I'm not saying that they need to come out there and show up at birthdays or anything like that. I get it. They're busy. They're doing stuff that way above my pay grade. Totally understand that. But if the guys don't feel like the chief is a part of them, then you lost them. And especially with like the battalion chiefs, because the battalion chiefs for most of the country, they they're shift personnel. They should be out there training. Just because you get in that spot does not mean that you know everything.
Yeah.
Just because you get that white shirt and those gold bugles, you're not the end all be all now. If anything, you need to keep your skills up. Yeah, you can do target solutions and telestaff and all that other stuff. I get it. But guess what? There's more to being a fireman than that. And when the guys start seeing that you're not engaged with them, you've lost them.
Yeah.
And once you lose them, it's hard to get it back.
Yeah. And we're going through that here in the Kansas area right now. I mean, in the last I'd say in the last 5 years, there have been multiple votes of no confidence for chiefs. There have been multiple lawsuits against chiefs. I mean, it's just, and again, it goes back to, and it's not just chiefs. I mean, it could be,
No,
company
yeah,
officers, but again, it goes back to they don't have their finger on the pulse of what's going on. And like I'll use my chief as an example. He wouldn't care if I said this, but we ordered a new Quint and it came in, and they, for whatever reason, they mounted the Q siren pedals vertically on the wall, so you almost have to like kick them with your toe. You're not stepping on it. It's like a
kicking.
toe. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like a toe tap. Well, you can't see the damn thing. So when you're sitting there in the seat and you look down, the way that the wall is, you can't see where the buttons are. So every time we run a run, you see the officer up there just kicking randomly until he finally hits the air horn and he goes, okay, that's where it is. And then he kicks over here until he hits the Q siren. He goes, okay, that's where it is. Well, the guys were complaining about it, and the chief goes, well, it's already there. There's nothing we can do about it. Well, he came in and wrote a shift for a captain. Captain had a family emergency. The chief says, don't worry about it. You go home. I'll jump on the rig. I said, cool. So the chief's up there, and we start rolling down the street to go on a call, and, he's sitting there tapping the front. He goes, where the hell's the gun? What is this? And finally gets the Q siren. He goes, dude, this sucks. When we got back, it was like maybe an hour later. He's already making phone calls being like, how can we fix this? How can you guys come remount this pedal?
yeah, I mean, absolutely. And you know what? Sometimes they just need to see it. And something as simple as if your trucks aren't getting maintenance properly and you're switching out of trucks 2 or 3 times in a shift, that's an issue. And when you have guys that when they were on the crew, they would be bitching up a storm if they had to do it. But then now that it doesn't truly affect them, it's, hey, don't worry about it. Just do it.
Yeah.
Guess what? That's a problem. And it's the same circus, different clowns everywhere you go. I get it. And the biggest thing that I've heard and that I've experienced is just the upper management being disengaged with the line personnel. They totally forget what it's like to run the calls, what it's like to live in the station every day. Like there's no reason why a station shouldn't have AC, because I can assure you if you were back then, you would be throwing a fit. Hey, what the hell is the chief doing? Why don't we have our AC fixed? So that's the big thing that I've seen and I've experienced, and it's just one of those things, man. It's I wish you or myself had the answers, but I mean, I don't know. I
Yeah.
wish, because it would make the fire service across the country a lot better.
Yeah. Well, and I think it goes back to a leadership. How do I want to say this? I've seen a shift in the culture of leadership from when I started to about the midway point, and now that pendulum is starting to swing back the other way, right? So when I started asking friends of mine who are chiefs, and I have a good friend that I actually went to fire. I was an explorer with him. Uh, he went to fire class with me. We graduated together. We went our separate ways. We still stayed in touch, but we always had a bet of who was going to become a chief officer first. And he called me about 5 years ago. He goes, hey, man, guess what I just got today? I said, what? And he sends me a picture of a white helmet. And I'm like, you got to be effing kidding me, right? He got promoted to assistant chief. I'm super happy. The guy is a genius, right? He's amazing. But as we were talking, he said, and he was doing DOD stuff. But he said, it's really funny because a lot of this leadership stuff that they're teaching us, I don't agree with it. And I said, what kind of stuff are they teaching you? And he said, well, that in a nutshell, you can't be friends with your subordinates. You can't show weakness to your subordinates. Your leadership style must be, and this isn't exclusive to DoD. This is stuff
Yeah.
that's being taught in major universities for organizational leadership degrees.
Yep.
If you're going to be a manager or a leader, you don't have to show compassion. Your job is to ensure that the company survives or the company is profitable or whatever your goal is. Well, in the fire service, look back 30, 40, 50 years ago. It was blue collar. We
Yes.
were a family. Our crews were taken care of by their company officer. The company officers were taken care of by the battalion chiefs. The battalion chiefs were taken care of by the chief. And if something happened, you could guarantee that they were all going to be there.
Yep.
And so I truly believe that because of the education component, and because we have not sat there and said we're going to do don't get me wrong, the formalized fire science degree or fire service administration's degrees teach something different. But when I go to school for organizational leadership, which I think is a great degree, that doesn't necessarily correlate to the fire service. And that's where I think we're starting to see what we're talking about, where guys are like, well, I don't have to be friends with the crews. In fact, I shouldn't be friends with the crews. When they were the guy that always talked about how important it was for the battalion chief to show up at birthdays or wish me a happy birthday.
Well, and that goes back to what I was talking about earlier. When we started, this was a blue collar job, and throughout my career, I'm seeing the shift for education, and I am all for education,
Absolutely.
100%. I'm not going to sit here and pound my fist on the table and be like, oh my god, no. You need educated personnel, but in the same breath, a degree in basket weaving does not relate to the fire service.
Yes.
So just because you have a degree does not mean that you're going to be a better officer than a guy that does not have a degree. Do I feel that there should be education? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I've seen some guys' reports that I'm like, you don't even look like you finished middle school.
Right.
Like, this makes zero sense. So, education, I totally understand, but that doesn't make you a great line officer. When you move up the ranks and you become a 40-hour chief, absolutely, because now you're managing budgets and you're managing different stuff. I get it. There should be education, but it's like you said with the pendulum. I feel we're the pendulum is swinging so far. We're putting so much emphasis on a degree that you have to have a degree. So for my department, you have to have a AS degree to be a lieutenant. You have to have a AS degree to be a captain. You have to have a bachelor's for battalion chief. And our big thing was, okay, well, what's next? Is it going to be a master's
Right.
for administration? Is it going to be a master's potentially next contract go around for battalion chiefs? What's going to be that breaking point? Because that pendulum is going to start swinging. And I get it. People have to justify why the fire service makes certain amount of money. I understand that. But having a degree does not change how I function on a fire ground. So yet they'll put so much emphasis on degrees, but yet you got a guy that can't even go up two flights of stairs, but yet he's a great officer. You know why? Because he has a degree.
Right. Right.
So there's an issue with that. And in the fire service, I say this all the time, we're a knee jerk reaction. So across the country, obviously, education was the hot topic. It probably affected you guys. It affected us down here. Everything had to be degree driven. Well, what when do we say enough's enough? Because this job is still a physical job. So just because you have a degree, but yet you can't carry the high rise pack up three flights of stairs, that degree is bullshit.
Right.
So that that's my 2 cents on it, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of people that want to debate me on it, but I'm telling you that's my personal opinion.
Yeah. No, and here is a great, it's not really a segue. So it really, it depends on how you're looking at it. Like if you look at a fire science degree, right? A lot of those things are applicable directly to the fire service.
Correct.
If you look at, and I've said this for a long time, I am a very big believer of you must have a college degree in this area, right? Like I'm not going to take a college degree in basket weaving. I need a
Correct.
college degree in public administration or fire service administration or whatever it is, or equivalent experience. And I'm starting to see more agencies, and I love it. I'm starting to see more agencies around the country who are saying you must possess this many years of experience. Let's say 3 years of experience as an officer and a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree, or 15 years of experience as a company officer in a suburban department or whatever it is. They're giving people the option. So the
Yes.
people that have been around who maybe haven't had the opportunity to go to school, and don't get me wrong, I mean, there's people for whatever reason, financial, whether it's family obligations. I got a friend of mine, a guy that I met when I moved down here to Kansas City. He was taking care of a family member that has health issues, long term health issues, and brought that family member in. He is the primary caretaker, him and his wife. He doesn't have time to go to school. He got
No.
his associates, and that's as far as he can go right now. And so to me, it's like, okay, so you're going to hold that guy back from getting a job by requiring him to have a bachelor or a master's when he can't afford to do it because he's taking care of a long-term family member or a family member with long-term health care issues.
Uh, you hit the nail on the head right there. It's we're holding these guys, we're holding them back because of whatever issue they may have. And listen, firemen will find a way to cheat the system no matter how it is. That's just the history of the fire service, has been that way forever. But there also has to be some understanding, like you said, that if you can't get a degree, whether it's childcare issues, financial issues, maybe your department does not reimburse. Well, guess what? To get a bachelor's, you're 15 to $20,000. So you're going to hold this guy back, which potentially could be one hell of a great company officer because he doesn't have a degree that he's probably not going to use. So where's that line in the sand? And is it, like you said, experience? Okay, well, this young guy can take the test with 3 years and a degree, and you got to have 12 years of experience. But then at the same time, depending on how your promotional tests go, that guy who's been in school this whole time, he's already in that school mindset. So the guy that doesn't have the degree, guess what? He's behind the eight ball again because he hasn't been in school for so long.
Yeah,
He
it's a good
doesn't know how
point.
to properly take the test. So, and that's a whole nother topic that we could sit here and talk for hours on is how promotional tests are done. Um, I've seen it from all over. My department, they give you 10 books. You have 3 months to study it. They don't tell you where they're pulling from. Study it. You get a 100 question test. After that, you got to pass that, and then you go into the practical. Is that the correct way of doing it? Well, probably not. I mean, when you got guys that are literally on the verge of divorce because they're studying 12 hours a day, eating two, three, four Adderalls and drinking five monsters, are we really looking out for our personnel? No. So it comes a time where just because we say we've always done it this way, maybe it's time that we start looking at other options.
Yeah,
It's okay to evolve because we've changed the way what hose we use, we changed our ladders, we've changed our trucks and everything else. But yet some of the easiest things that we could change, the department refuses to change because, well, we've always done it that way.
Right.
Well, guess what? We used to ride open cabs. We don't do that no more.
I wish we could.
Yeah, and it's the same with the big, huge knee jerk reaction of clean cabs.
Yeah.
Like that was the big hot topic. Well, guess what? If you look across the country, a lot of departments are getting away from it. Why? Because it was a knee jerk reaction.
Yeah.
It,
And unfortunately, there's departments that are now stuck with trucks for the next 20 years, right? That are set up for clean cab. So now they got
yeah,
to redo
my,
things just to make it work.
my department's one of them.
Yeah.
They jumped at the, well, you know what, clean cab, this is it, cancer, blah blah blah. I get all that, but if you sit there and you start looking at the stats and the response time and everything else, there's things that we can do after the fire is done to alleviate all those issues. So as a culture, we're learning that cancer is the devil. I get it. I mean, there's departments out there that get clean cab, but yet they have no diesel exhaust removal systems in the bay.
Right. Or they have no extractor to wash their gear.
Correct. So okay, yeah, we got a clean cab truck, but yet the truck turns on in the bay, all the diesel exhaust is going into the station, into the where they get their ice for, it saturates the ice machine. You can wipe your hand on the ice machine, diesel soot comes off. So is that really healthy? Healthy? Sorry. No, it's not. So we just jumped on the bandwagon of, oh my god, clean cab, but yet you're not doing anything. It just looks good on paper.
Sure.
So that that's a whole nother soapbox that we can get on a different day. But it's the education side of it. I'm all for the education in the fire service. We need it, but there comes a time when we have to come and say what's realistic.
Right.
And I feel that that aspect of it never gets taken into accountability. Like no one ever takes into account what's realistic. Is, does it change that a battalion chief has a bachelor's from the guy who maybe has been stepped up to a battalion chief for the last 10 years
Sure.
and has run numerous fires, numerous large scale events, to the guy who is maybe just stepped up for a month or two, but he has a degree, so he gets favoritism over it? No, it doesn't.
Well,
We have to take into account the experience factor.
yeah. And I love, uh, okay. So one of the things you said that really just kind of, it jogged my memory. So a couple years ago, I was talking to a couple different people about processes and how they do it, and I love this idea. So not only do they have a written, right, that gives you, it awards you points. They give you a practical exam, so you have to do a tabletop exercise. You do a simulation. You go out and do some stuff with the crew, and I think that that's super important. But they also teamed up with, it was either a high school or a college, their drama department, and they had role players come in, and in this community center they had like 5 different rooms. Well, the candidates had to go and rotate between all 5 rooms. One was an irate citizen, one was a family member who just found out that their loved one was run over by a fire truck. It was just like all these like worst case scenarios that you had to deal with. And I mean, they're like crying and sobbing and yelling and screaming. And it was just to see how people reacted. It was only to see how they were going to react with. And some of the role players were actual firefighters from the department. Like, hey, man, I was supposed to have the day off today, and now I'm drafted, or, I'm mandated to work because of this and this and this. And it was really cool to see how when I saw the spreadsheet of everything that was laid out, you could be a horrible test taker, but if you did really well during the practical and the live scenarios, you scored just as well or better than the person who aced the written test. Right. So it kind of hit all the different areas. So if you're a horrible test taker, you have the opportunity to advance without eliminating other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and that's always been one of my biggest gripes was we're taking guys who are 30s, 40s that have been out of school for quite some time, and you're giving them all this information. That's what's uh, that's what's going to put them, whether they get to move forward to the practical or not. It's like there has to be better ways in the fire service to test, whether it's taking into account your personnel file. Like, what have you done for the fire department? Did you have you given back, or do you just show up every third day and put your gear on the rig, run your calls, go home? Or are you the guy that's volunteering and giving back and doing special projects and stuff like that? Because that should go into an account for something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. So we're at the 1 hour mark. I want to talk real quick because I know you're doing this and I think it's amazing. Do you want to talk real quick about your conference that's coming up in 2023?
Sure. Yeah, we're doing 10 years, 10-year anniversary. It's We're just doing a 1 day. It's January 27th. It's in Miami Dade's banquet hall. So it seats 450 people. We have guest speakers. We have Chief Brian Brush, Chief Corley Moore, Chief Clyde Gordon, Matt Paglione, Danny McCauley, and Rob Ramirez. So they're all going to be lecturing that day. And then after that, we're going to have a Brotherhood Bash there with bunch of different raffles. We got Miko there. We got Genesis. We got a bunch of different people that are going to be there. We're going to raffle off a bunch of stuff. It's just a way to give back. It's $100. You're getting all the guest speakers. You're going to get the after party afterwards, and we're looking forward to it, man. It's just celebrating 10 years. It's a big accomplishment, and to be a fire training company that's survived 10 years.
Yeah.
So it's our way to give back.
Dude, I love it, man. And I saw the list of instructors, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is fantastic!" It's great. I mean, it's great that you guys are celebrating it because I think a lot of the time, listen, man, people in looking at you and how you are, you are very strong in your convictions. You are very strong in what you believe. And so people would be surprised to hear that humility is actually one of your big things. And so for you guys to sit there and say, hey, listen, we've been around for 10 years. We're going to celebrate this. And that's a huge accomplishment. Think about all the people that you have been able to teach and instruct and learn from as well. Over the last 10 years. So I think that's awesome. I want to congratulate you guys on 10 years, and I'm looking forward to the next 10.
Yeah, I appreciate it, brother. It's So when we decided to do it, we didn't want it to be the cadre speaking. And I sat down with Rob, and he's the only one of the cadre that's actually speaking. And we said, you know what? Let's reach out to the people that we like, our peers. And there was a lot more that we wanted, but we didn't want to make a 3 day conference. So we literally made it a 1 day conference, and then after that, everyone can party, drink beers, and talk shop and have fun. So we reached out to the guest speakers that we truly enjoy listening to and that we've learned a lot from, and this is the lineup that we came up with.
That's awesome, man. So how can people get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of us on National Rescue Consultants on Instagram, Facebook. You can reach out to me anytime via email. Go to the website. It's nationalrescueconsultants.com. And feel free. My phone's always on. I will answer anything. Anything. I'll point you in the right direction. If I don't have the answer, I promise you I'll find it for you, or I will point you in the right direction to someone that does have the answer for you. So I appreciate you having us on, and it was a pleasure. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely, man. And I got to be honest with you. I'm going to give you one more accolade. I think you and I have a voice off for the best radio voice. You are one of the only other people that I can think of where I'm like, man, that guy's got a really, really nice voice.
Thank
So,
you.
all right, man. Take care, be safe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you.